Yeah, I just wanted to talk about how to deal with conflict. That's something that I've experienced quite a lot. And when I talk of conflict, I mean, arguments, disagreements with others. How do you deal with that? Because all of us are bound to to have disagreement with someone, whether it be parents or siblings or some other relative. I've had quite a lot of that. Whether it's because I have a different religious belief, or whether I'm refusing for someone to tell me what to do in my house, or I'm having a disagreement with a relative because they're trying to abuse me and my wife, which has happened to me quite a lot. So, and in fact, initially I wanted to title this "How to Avoid Conflict," but actually no one can avoid conflict, even if you're Christ-like and you are trying your best to to be perfect, to be holy. You'll always come across conflict, because there seems to be this thing in human nature, that there are always people that want to lord it over others. So you might basically you might be staying in your lane, minding your own business, knowing your place and not interfering with others, not trying to lord it over others, not trying to tell others what to do. But conflict will always find you, and you always find that there's someone that you're going to have a disagreement with. You can even be out doing your shopping at the supermarket or something. You know you can have a what's it called, road rage. You can have an argument with someone in the car park. But so what I wanted to discuss is, how do you deal with it, not how do you avoid it, because you can't avoid it, because if you might be running away from trouble, but trouble always has a way of finding you. So something else I've noticed as well, through experience, is that especially amongst Christians, obviously, there's a lot of emphasis on forgiveness. So when you, like, let's say if I tell another family member or a relative that so and so did this to me and it really hurt me and it offended me, one of the things that comes up a lot is, oh yeah, you have to forgive them. Yeah, even amongst when I was going to church, that's forgiveness is mentioned a lot. Not that there's anything necessarily wrong with telling someone that they need to forgive someone else, but there's actually too much emphasis on that, rather than finding a way to deal with that person who's being offensive or abusive. So I find that the heavy emphasis on forgiveness, actually, for me personally, it doesn't resolve whatever issues I'm having with someone. It's good to talk about forgiveness, but also come up with a solution how to deal with that person who is being abusive rather. Because if you tell someone who is being hurt, who has been hurt or offended by someone else, that they need to forgive the person who has hurt them or offended them, you are not resolving anything, because that person who has been hurt might continue to put themselves in the same situation where they are continuing to be hurt, and that's something that needs to be stopped, basically. So this is one of the things I want to talk about today. So it has been said that violence begets violence, and this is true. There are a lot of people who seem to they want to resolve things through violence. But I mean, we've been on this earth. Human beings have been on this earth for a long time. When has violence ever solved anything? We've had many wars, and we're still having wars. In fact, the two world wars, I think it was even World War One, was said to be the war that was going to end all wars. But we're still having wars right now. As I speak, there are still wars going on. So, I just want to look at some examples of conflict in the Bible and how they were dealt with. So the first one is from Genesis 13, verses 5 to 12. It says that Abraham and Lot both had lots of flocks and herds, and the land was not able to bear them, that they might dwell together. So Abraham said to Lot, "Let there be no strife between me and thee," and asked Lot to separate himself from Abraham. Lot chose to dwell near Sodom and Gomorrah, and Abraham dwelt in the land of Canaan. And of course, we know what happened later. I think Lot ended up in in Sodom and Gomorrah, in those two cities, and the other cities that were near them also got burnt um, with fire and brimstone. So in Matthew 10, verses 22 and 23, Jesus said, "And ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake, but he that endureth to the end shall be saved." But listen to this next part. About Jesus is telling us how to deal with those that persecute us. He says, "But when they persecute you in this city, flee ye into another." So someone could be saying, "Oh yeah, but what does that have to do with disagreeing with someone?" Persecution is basically it's a disagreement. It's where persecution tends to happen when there are disagreements between two religious beliefs. When, let's say, if you take, for instance, Nigeria, where you have the country is almost split between Christians and Muslims, they tend to fight quite a lot. So that's a disagreement which is based on religion. And when Jesus says that when you're persecuted as a Christian, you should move and go and stay somewhere else. So same. This is a principle that we can take when it comes to conflict with relatives or co-workers or parents and siblings. It's move yourself away from the thing that's causing conflict. Yeah, so in Acts 15, verses 37 to 39, we read that Paul and Barnabas had a disagreement about taking John Mark on a missionary journey. We read in verse 39 that the contention, or the argument, the disagreement, was so sharp between them that they departed asunder from the other. So Paul and Barnabas actually separated. They went different ways because they couldn't agree. So even in the Holy Scriptures, we have examples of those we deem to have been holy, to have been perfect, who actually disagreed. So if you don't agree with someone, you don't have to stay. You don't have to continue to try and have a relationship with them. Remember that we all have different characters, you know. So this is a mistake that I also made when I was growing up, and even as an adult, that I continued to try to communicate, to initiate communication, to visit those who were actually being abusive to me. But in the end, one of the things I learned is you can't change someone's character. All you can do is pray for that person, for God to send His Holy Spirit to them, to speak to them, that they may be convicted of their sin, or of their sins, including this thing of wanting to be abusive or offensive to others. Otherwise, we as human beings cannot change another person, because what tends to happen is that you continue to get wounded and to be offended, and be hurt. But when you realize that someone has an abusive character, it's best to get away from that person. And we even have that in the Holy Scriptures. Here, no one is necessarily abusing each other in these accounts that I'm reading in the Holy Scriptures. But the fact is, they didn't agree. So if you don't agree with someone, you don't have to stay and just be forgiving, like what I mentioned earlier, that a lot of Christians put a lot of emphasis on forgiveness, but they don't tell you that you need to move away from the person who is being abusive. So Jacob and Laban as well separated when they could not live together, and made a pact that they would not cross a boundary that they had agreed to. So remember that Laban was very abusive to Jacob. He basically deceived Jacob. And this was a lesson for Jacob, because Jacob, the name Jacob actually means deceiver or supplanter. Jacob deceived Esau, and because of that he had to leave home and go and work for Laban. But whilst he was working for Laban, it actually says in the book of Genesis that Laban changed his wages 10 times. You know, he basically abused him, and they eventually separated because of that. So in John 7 verse 1, it says, "After these things Jesus walked in Galilee, for he would not walk in Jewry, because the Jews sought to kill him." So Jesus actually stopped going to certain places in Israel because they wanted to kill him. Now the Jews' feast and tabernacles, so the Feast of Tabernacles was at hand. His brethren encouraged him and pressured him to go to the feast. But in order to avoid conflict with the Jews, Jesus said, this bit I've just read, that's me talking. But Jesus said to his brethren, "Go ye up to this feast, go not unto this feast, for my time is not yet full come." I think he actually said, "I go not up to this feast yet." And then in verse 10 of John chapter 7, it says, "But when his brethren were gone up, then went he also up unto the feast, not openly, but as it were in secret." So remember that the Jews wanted to kill Jesus because he had said a lot of things that had angered them and offended them. One of the things that he said was that he was the Son of God, and they knew that he meant that literally. Not like modern day Christians who say that when the Holy Scriptures say that Jesus is the Son of God, it's metaphoric, it's a metaphor. It's just a title. It doesn't really mean that. So yeah, when Jesus said that he was the Son of God, he meant that literally, and they knew that meant that he was also God because he was the Son of God. So they wanted to kill him because of that. And he had also said some things as well. I mean, calling them hypocrites and vipers. So they wanted to kill him because of that. But so in order to avoid getting into conflict with those Jews that didn't believe in him, he went up to the Feast of Tabernacles in secret. He did go, but he went in secret because he was trying to avoid those same people that were not only trying to kill him, but were trying to persecute him. So yeah, very, very wise principles that we can take from the Holy Scriptures about how we are to live day to day with our neighbors, our relatives, our co-workers. That's how we're supposed to deal with conflict. I know it can be difficult in certain situations such as work, because even I had problems when I was working in the UK. But if you have problems with a co-worker, you just go and tell your supervisor, and maybe you ask to be moved to a different team, work different shifts to avoid being with that same person who's being offensive and abusive. It's not about just forgiving someone. If you forgive someone who is being abusive, that person is going to continue to abuse you, because in fact they'll think that you're weak. You're just forgiving them. You go up and you tell them, "Oh yeah, you did this to me and I was offended, but I forgive you." Some people, depending on the character, will actually continue to abuse you, and I know of such characters who do such stuff. But yeah, the best thing is when you've given someone a chance and then they continue to abuse you and cause you hurt, then I think it's best for you to move away from that situation. Even Bible characters did that. So why do we constantly talk about forgiveness instead of applying the principle that you need to move away from? Don't stay in the same place where someone is causing you a lot of hurt, because it's basically something very important I need to mention as well is, if you allow yourself to remain in a situation where you are being abused, it's eventually, regardless of how strong you are mentally, it's going to cause you, it's going to affect your health, especially your mental health. You might start having problems, sleeping and all this stuff, and you might even start thinking of taking revenge on that person. So yeah, it's best to move away from such characters. Yeah, I was just thinking, if Jesus himself, the Son of God, the literal Son of God, none of this, Trinity stuff that the Christians are talking about nowadays, where Jesus is actually not the literal Son of God because he was always there, from the beginning. Jesus came out from God, and if the point I wanted to make is that if Jesus, who is the Son of God, and all power has been given unto him, that means he's way more wiser than we are. If Jesus actually took action to avoid being in a situation where he would get into conflict with the Jews that were trying to persecute him, and the Jews that were trying to kill him, and the Jews that didn't believe in him, what makes us think that as feeble human beings we can be more wiser than Jesus, and basically continue to put ourselves in situations where we are going against the principles that we've been given, and we continue to mingle and be in contact with those who are abusive and are trying to persecute us in one way or another. That's not wise. I think we need to basically take heed and look at how Jesus dealt with conflict and with disagreement and with persecution. It's basically, like I've said many times now already, you just move yourself away from that situation. It doesn't matter who it is, even if it's your the very mom that gave birth to you. If she's being abusive, and there are lots of moms who are like that, there are lots of dads who are like that, there are lots of parents who are like that, who abuse their own children. I would say, based on my personal experience, and I know I've mentioned this in other videos, you need to go no contact with those people. Continue to pray for them, but do not put yourself, no, don't be making contact with them and thinking, yeah, I'm praying for them so that they can change. Well, only God knows whether that person will change or not. But I would say, and as hard as it is, you need to basically stay away from such people, because it's going to affect you one way or another. That's what I've had to do, not only with my parents, but even with one of my brothers and some of my other relatives. I don't talk to them because they are very abusive, and then at the same time they claim to be Seventh-day Adventist Christians. One of them is even an evangelist, but he's very abusive, and I'm referring to one of my uncles. He's very abusive. So it's not about Christianity is not about simply claiming to be a Christian. It's about behavior and character. It's about character. If someone is unchristlike and seems to display more satanic traits, that person is not a Christian. If someone is trying to lord it over others and is abusing others, that person is not a Christian. A Christian is someone who is Christ-like, who treats others as he would like to be treated himself. That's called the golden rule, which I spoke about in one of my other videos. We are to live by the golden rule. So, and also for those who have been hurt or offended in some way or another, don't then copy the bad behavior of others, trying to take revenge and stuff like that, because at the end of the day, we're all going to be judged. If you take revenge, even though the Holy Scripture says that God says vengeance is mine, and you are also starting to be abusive as well yourself, then we all know what that will lead to. It will lead to the loss of your eternal salvation. The best way is to stay away from those who are abusive. For those who are still staying with their parents and are not free and independent, it's a very difficult situation. But you just have to wait until you move out from home to get away from such, from abusive parents and from abusive siblings and relatives. Yeah. So, yeah, that's what I want to say on how to deal with conflict. It's not just about forgiveness; it's also about getting away, moving away. Basically cutting off contact, going no contact with abusive relatives.